You're standing on rock that used to be fire. Black stone stretches in every direction, the remains of ancient lava oceans that once covered half the planet. It feels calm now. But deep beneath your feet the same heat still breathes. Every cliff, every mountain, every grain of sand carries the memory of flame. You can see it in the basalt and the obsidian that glitters under a fading sky fossil fire, frozen in time. If you're using this to fall asleep, that's literally why I make these. So maybe subscribe, and tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Because I've seen your comments. New York, just past midnight. London before dawn. Sydney, in the soft glow of morning. It's wild that we're all hearing the same heartbeat of Earth, no matter the hour. Tonight, we're going deep back to when the world was young, wrapped in molten light. Before life began, there was only fire. Welcome to the age of fire. Beneath your feet, the ground feels still, solid, permanent. But that's only the illusion, the lie that keeps us calm. What we call the Earth's surface, the crust that holds our mountains, oceans, cities, and dreams, is thinner than the skin of an apple. If the Earth were the size of a globe, all the forests and continents we know would fit within a single fragile page wrapped around a core of molten fire. And that fire is not sleeping. It's alive. Deep below, nearly 3,000 kilometers down, the mantle moves in slow motion. You'd never see it, never feel it, but it moves, rising, falling, folding upon itself like the breath of something ancient and alive. This is the heartbeat of the planet. It doesn't beat in seconds or minutes, but in epochs. Every pulse pushes molten rock upward, where it presses against the brittle crust, searching for weakness. Sometimes that pressure holds steady for millions of years. Sometimes it breaks. When it does, continents fracture, oceans open, mountains rise and vanish. And from the cracks, Earth exhales its fire. These are not small events. Each eruption is a message from the planet's heart, a reminder that beneath all our rivers and roots and roads, this world is not still, it is burning. Scientists call them mantle plumes, columns of superheated rock rising from near the core, hotter than 1,600 degrees Celsius. They are invisible until they touch the crust, and when they do, they change everything. Imagine a fountain of magma the size of Australia, pushing upward for millions of years, spreading like slow, liquid thunder. That's what lies beneath you right now. Every continent carries scars from these encounters. You can see them in the black basalt cliffs of Iceland, in the vast plains of the Deccan in India, in the dark staircases of the Siberian traps. Each one tells the same story. The surface broke, and the fire rose. These aren't separate events, they are verses, in a single planetary rhythm, repeating through time, shaping the earth we walk on. So the next time you stand on solid ground, remember what it really is. Beneath your shoes are rivers of rock, moving as slowly as continents drift, stretching and folding, building pressure that will one day explode into creation again. The world we know is just the cooled skin of something far greater, a living engine wrapped in stone. For most of history, it's been quiet. But as the ages turn, there are times when that quiet ends. Times when the planet breathes deep and the fire comes for the surface again. This is one of those times. The age of fire is about to begin. 250 million years ago, the world was whole. One vast supercontinent, stretched from pole to pole. A single colossal landmass we now call Pangaea. From orbit, it would have looked almost lifeless, an endless continent of ochre and red, its center scorched by heat, its coasts ringed by shallow seas. There were no flowers yet, no birdsong, just wind and sand and silence. But beneath that silence, something was waking up. Deep within the planet, the mantle began to stir. For millions of years, it had been shifting quietly, its heat trapped and restless beneath the joined continents. Now, that energy started to rise. Columns of molten rock, hotter than anything on the surface, began pushing upward through the crust. They pressed against it from below, bending it, cracking it, searching for weakness. The Earth's skin, thin, brittle, and fragile, began to fracture. At first, it was subtle. Hairline cracks stretching across deserts, faint tremors that rippled through ancient forests of fern and conifer. The air shimmered with heat. Then, the first fractures split open, and light poured out liquid fire seeping from wounds in the earth. Lava began to crawl over the landscape, glowing like veins of gold under the darkness of space. The planet itself had begun to boil. Imagine standing there, in the middle of Pangaea, surrounded by horizon after horizon of volcanic glow. The ground is trembling. The air hums with static and ash. Rivers of lava flow for hundreds of kilometers, carving new shapes into the land, turning ancient riverbeds into glowing trenches. It isn't just one volcano, it's thousands. Entire regions become seas of fire, the crust opening like the cracked shell of an egg. As the eruptions intensify, gases pour into the atmosphere: carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur dioxide. The sky turns copper, the sun dims behind a veil of dust, and acid rain begins to fall. The balance of the planet is shifting. Oceans heat and evaporate, forests ignite, and animals flee into lands that no longer remember stability. But this destruction is only the beginning. The continents themselves are starting to move apart, tugged by the forces of the rising mantle. The great chain reaction that will split Pangaea, reshape the oceans, and redraw the face of the planet has begun. The ground is no longer still. It breathes. It bleeds. It boils. This is the dawn of a new epoch. A time when the earth turns itself inside out, when continents burn, and the story of life is rewritten in the language of fire. The world trembles. The crust groans under the weight of forces it can no longer contain. What began as fractures across Pangaea has become something far greater, something apocalyptic. Deep beneath the northern reaches of the supercontinent, the mantle finally breaks through. What follows is not a single eruption. It is the greatest outpouring of fire in the history of the Earth. In the region that would one day be called Siberia, the ground splits open for hundreds of kilometers. Curtains of molten rock explode upward, fountains of lava blasting into the sky higher than any mountain. The air turns orange. The land pulses with light. Imagine the surface of the planet transforming into a sea of flame, a continent bleeding from 1,000 wounds. It is the Earth itself, turned inside out. This is the birth of the Siberian Traps, a volcanic province so vast that even today, it stretches across millions of square kilometers larger than Western Europe. But in this ancient age, it is not solid basalt. It is liquid fire, pouring from the ground continuously for centuries. Lava rivers race across plains, filling valleys, swallowing forests, and reshaping entire mountain ranges. The sound is a constant roar, as if the planet itself is exhaling in agony. Every eruption feeds the next. As the magma wells upward, it releases gas in unimaginable volumes: carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur dioxide. Ash clouds roll across the sky, blotting out the sun. Lightning flickers through volcanic haze. For years, darkness spreads across the world. Acid rain falls. Oceans warm. The balance between life and death tips violently toward one side. Scientists estimate that over the course of this event, enough lava erupted to bury the entire Earth beneath a layer several meters thick. It did not happen in days or weeks, but in pulses, each lasting thousands of years. Between them, the world would cool briefly long enough for the land to harden, the forests to regrow, only for the next eruption to begin again. It was a rhythm of destruction that spanned more than 1,000,000 years. the skies of Pangaea glowed for generations. From the northern tundra to the southern deserts of Gondwana, light from the eruptions was visible on every horizon. Animals fled, plants burned, rivers boiled, and entire ecosystems collapsed. Yet, even in that chaos, life clung to existence in pockets of refuge underground, in the shadows, or beneath the seas. This was the first true age of fire, when the Earth's own heart poured onto its skin, reshaping every coastline and mountain range, rewriting the chemistry of air and ocean. The planet had become a crucible. The old world was dying, and within the flames, the conditions for a new one were being forged. The skies of the ancient Earth darken. What began as a distant glow on the horizon has become an unending inferno, stretching from one end of Pangaea to the other. For years, the air has carried the taste of ash, the sting of acid, and the heavy scent of burning forests. The world is no longer defined by land and sea, but by fire and smoke. Above the glowing basalt plains of Siberia, the sky itself begins to change. Volcanic gases pour into the atmosphere in unimaginable volumes: carbon dioxide, methane, chlorine, and sulfur dioxide. Each eruption adds another layer to the growing shroud around the planet. Sulfur particles scatter sunlight, turning day into a perpetual orange twilight. The horizon burns with crimson hues, while the sun, weakened and distorted, hangs like a dull ember behind the haze. The blue of the sky disappears. The stars vanish. The earth begins to suffocate under its own breath. The oceans respond first. Rain, heavy with sulfuric acid, falls in endless sheets, hissing as it strikes the still cooling lava fields. Rivers run black with ash, their waters poisoned by minerals leached from the volcanic rock. Coral reefs, once vibrant with early life, bleach and dissolve as the ocean's chemistry shifts. Plankton populations crash, cutting off the foundation of the marine food chain. In the silence beneath the waves, extinction begins. On land, forests ignite faster than they can grow. Entire ecosystems are smothered under ash clouds that drift for thousands of kilometers. The atmosphere becomes a weapon. The sulfuric haze traps heat during the night and reflects sunlight by day, sending the planet lurching between scorching days and freezing nights. This unstable climate is more than catastrophe, it's transformation. The biosphere itself is being rewritten. With every passing decade, the air grows thinner and more hostile. Oxygen levels drop. Animals struggle to breathe. Even the insects, the great survivors of past ages, begin to vanish. The very fabric of life is being tested. Yet, amid the collapse, new rules are forming. Species that can endure heat, acid, and darkness begin to adapt, taking their first uncertain steps into a new evolutionary world. This is more than a volcanic event. It is the planet remaking itself from the inside out. The crust has ruptured, the mantle is exhaling, and the sky, once blue and filled with light, has become a living furnace. For millions of years, the earth will burn beneath this sulfuric veil. What emerges after will not be the same planet. This is not just eruption. It is rebirth through fire. There are moments in Earth's history when the planet seems to hold its breath. This is one of them. The skies are dark, the seas are poisoned, and the air itself has turned against life. Across Pangaea, silence spreads, where once there was movement, color, and song. It begins slowly, a ripple of decline, and then accelerates into a planetary collapse. Scientists call it the Permian-Triassic extinction event. History remembers it by another name, the Great Dying. Over 90% of all living species disappear. The numbers are so vast they almost lose meaning. Coral reefs vanish entirely, their calcium skeletons dissolving in acidified seas. Trilobites, survivors of hundreds of millions of years, are gone. The forests that once covered the supercontinent burn to ash and never regrow. Even insects, those tireless adapters that endured every catastrophe before, are decimated. The planet's biological engine grinds to a halt. The oceans, once teeming with life, turn to a suffocating soup. Layers of ash and sulfur fall from the sky, mixing with rainfall to form acid that seeps into every current. As temperatures rise, oxygen levels in the water plummet. Vast dead zones spread across the seafloor. Fish, shellfish, and ammonites suffocate in silence. Deep-sea vents release hydrogen sulfide, a toxic gas that seeps upward, killing whatever still clings to survival near the surface. The seas become a graveyard. On land, the heat is unbearable. Daytime temperatures soar past 50 degrees Celsius in some regions. Plants wither, rivers dry into dust. The air is thick with carbon dioxide, and every breath feels heavy, slow, unnatural. Animals retreat into burrows or caves, desperate to escape the heat. But the earth itself offers no refuge. The ground radiates warmth from below, as if the mantle's fire is rising to the surface. Entire ecosystems collapse in sequence. Herbivores starve as vegetation disappears. Predators follow soon after. The great synapsids, the dominant creatures of the time, fade from the record. Bones crumble in the heat. The biosphere unravels. For nearly 10 million years, the world will remain quiet, recovering inch by inch, breath by breath. This was the closest life has ever come to ending completely. Yet, even in the ashes, there are survivors. A few species of small reptiles and burrowing creatures cling to existence, their resilience written into the genetic future of everything that will come after. From them, new lineages will rise, and evolution will begin again. The Great Dying is not just the story of extinction, it is the prelude to renewal, a reset written in fire and silence. The world that follows will belong to the survivors, and they will inherit a planet forever changed. The fire has ended, but what remains is not life, it is aftermath. Across the scarred surface of the earth, silence reigns. The last eruptions fade into whispers of smoke rising from the fissures that once glowed like rivers of light. The continents, blackened and hollow, stretch endlessly beneath a dim red sky. Where once there were forests, there are now plains of glassy basalt. Where oceans once shimmered with color, there now lies a dull, lifeless expanse. The wind moves through this emptiness, cold and unchallenged, sweeping dust across a world that no longer remembers what it was to live. The sound of life is gone. There are no birds, no insects, no movement save for the drifting ash falling like snow across the ruins of Pangaea. The air, once alive with the chorus of creatures and the rhythm of leaves, is now still. The world feels frozen in time, caught between death and renewal. Every horizon is gray. Every sea shallow and pale beneath the weight of chemical haze. It is as though the planet itself is resting after a long, fevered sickness. Yet beneath that calm, deep below the basalt crust, the mantle continues to breathe. The same fire that once tore through the continents still stirs quietly in the dark. Heat flows upward in slow pulses, circulating like the heartbeat of something enormous and ancient. The planet has survived its own destruction, and within that survival lies the possibility of rebirth. The silence above is not the end, it is the interval between worlds. Rain begins to fall again, not the corrosive acid of the past but a gentler drizzle, washing over the stone, seeping into cracks where life will one day return. In the shallows of the ocean, the first microbial mats begin to reform, feeding on minerals released from volcanic rock. Simple organisms, bacteria, archaea, the unseen architects of life, creep back into existence, turning poison into possibility. Slowly, the chemistry of the earth begins to shift. The silence lingers for millions of years, but even silence cannot last forever. The wind carves the basalt plains into new shapes. The seas begin to deepen again. In this fragile equilibrium, the world heals, scar by scar, molecule by molecule. Beneath the ashes, the seeds of the next age lie waiting, dormant, but ready. It is a fragile peace, born not of safety, but of exhaustion. The earth has burned, bled, and buried nearly everything that lived upon it. And now, in the stillness that follows, the planet inhales once more. The age of fire has paused, but the heart of the world is still beating, quietly, patiently, waiting for its next breath. The silence never truly lasts. Deep within the earth, the fire stirs again. What the great dying ended, the planet now seeks to renew not with life, but with motion. Beneath the cooling crust, the mantle continues its slow, restless churn. Its plumes of molten rock rise toward the surface like glowing fingers pressing against a fragile shell. The earth is not done remaking itself. It is only beginning a new rhythm, a new heartbeat in its endless cycle of destruction and creation. The first to awaken is Siberia, the wound that once drowned the planet in flame. Long after the last eruption cooled, the land still smolders from within. Lava seeps once more through ancient cracks, filling valleys and burying mountains beneath new layers of black stone. But this time, the fire does not remain confined to the north. It begins to spread across the supercontinent like a slow, deliberate tide. Far to the south, in the heart of Gondwana, another giant stirs. The Karoo eruptions ignite, pouring fire over what will one day be Africa and Antarctica. For millions of years, molten rock floods the landscape, stretching as far as the horizon. Rivers of basalt flow across plains that once held strange reptilian forests, turning them into desolate stone fields. The earth itself becomes a map of scars, each eruption a signature, each province a mark of fire etched deep into the crust. As one cycle wanes, another rises. In time, the central Atlantic begins to open. What was once the seamless heart of Pangaea starts to crack apart, and from that rift pours a third ocean of lava. Fire fills the gap between continents, and the first outlines of a new world begin to emerge. The Atlantic Ocean is born not from water, but from flame. For tens of millions of years, these eruptions repeat like breaths from the planet's core. Each pulse of magma reshapes the continents, rearranges the seas, and redefines the air itself. The Earth becomes a living engine of transformation. Even as life struggles to return, the crust beneath it never rests. From space, this age would have been breathtaking, a planet covered in glowing veins of light, continents rimmed in volcanic red. The surface seems alive, shimmering and shifting with the slow dance of geological fire. It is a dangerous beauty, the kind only a living planet could create. The age of eruptions is not a brief event, but an era spanning tens of millions of years. Each blaze burns, cools, and hardens, leaving behind new continents, new mountains, and new possibilities. The Earth's heart continues to beat, molten and eternal, rewriting the surface with every breath. The Age of Fire has entered its next chapter, a world remade again and again by the heat beneath our feet. When the fires finally fade, they leave behind landscapes unlike anything the planet had ever seen. The world cools, the rivers of lava solidify, and the chaos of eruption turns to stillness. What remains are continents reshaped by fire, draped in vast fields of black rock. These are the basalt worlds, born from the heart of the earth, the remnants of an age when continents bled molten light. Across what will one day be, India lies one of the greatest of these scars, the Deccan Traps. Stretching over 500,000 square kilometers, it is a world built from layer upon layer of hardened lava, stacked like pages in a story written by fire. Each layer marks a separate eruption, each separated by thousands of years, sometimes hundreds of thousands. Together, they rise into towering steps of dark stone, a frozen ocean of magma that once ran red across the land. Even now, 66 million years later, The Deccan Traps still breathe heat from below. Half a world away, in what will become South America, another monument to fire stands. The Paraná basalts, remnants of a time when molten rock spilled from deep fissures across the southern continent. The landscape that followed is otherworldly great plateaus that stretch to the horizon, cliffs carved by eons of rain, and valleys filled with basalt columns that cool in perfect hexagonal symmetry. What began as chaos has solidified into geometry, the mathematics of cooling stone. Further north, across the remnants of ancient oceans, lies Wrangellia, an older scar still visible in the rocks of Alaska and western Canada. Here, 3 kilometers of solid basalt reveal a time when the Pacific floor itself ignited. Each of these places, Siberia, Deccan, Paraná, Wrangellia, is a chapter in the same planetary saga. The continents, though now far apart, still carry the fingerprints of that global inferno. Over millions of years, wind and water sculpted these basalt worlds into new shapes. Rain carved canyons through the hardened flows. Rivers sliced deep channels, exposing layers of lava like the rings of a tree. Life, slowly returning, found refuge in the cracks and hollows, its roots digging into volcanic soil rich with minerals. What was once deadly became fertile again. Forests returned, growing on rock forged from catastrophe. Today, when you stand on the cliffs of the Deccan, or trace the stair-stepped ridges of the Paraná, you are standing on the remnants of ancient oceans of fire. These vast plateaus are the cooled memories of an Earth that remade itself through heat and destruction. The basalt worlds are monuments to survival, proof that from chaos comes beauty, and from the fires of the deep, life will always find its way back. There are moments in Earth's history when the boundaries between elements dissolve, when fire and water, the 2 great forces of creation, collide with such intensity that the world itself seems to tremble. This is one of those moments. The continents bleed molten rock, and the seas, vast and ancient, rise to meet it. As rivers of lava pour into the ocean, entire coastlines are erased in an instant. Steam bursts upward in violent plumes, towering higher than storms, climbing through the troposphere and into the stratosphere. The sound is deafening. The Earth is speaking in the language of fire. When molten basalt, at more than 1,000 degrees Celsius, meets seawater, it is not a simple meeting of opposites, it is war. Water flashes into steam with explosive force, shattering the lava into glassy fragments that rain down like black snow. The coastlines of Pangaea vanish beneath these encounters, the outlines of continents redrawn by eruption after eruption. The seas boil, the skies whiten, and a haze of salt, ash, and steam spreads across the planet like a fever. This is no isolated catastrophe, it is global. From the shallow shelves of the Tethys Ocean to the coasts of the Proto-Atlantic, everywhere lava meets water, chaos follows. The oceans absorb the planet's heat, storing it deep within their currents. That heat triggers a chain reaction. Warmer waters release carbon dioxide, feeding the atmosphere with more greenhouse gas. The world grows hotter still, which fuels more evaporation, which leads to thicker clouds and heavier rains. It is a runaway system, a feedback loop of fire and vapor, each element feeding the other in a relentless spiral. As the atmosphere fills with steam, sunlight struggles to reach the surface. The sky glows with an eerie, copper light. Beneath that haze, temperatures soar. The oceans begin to stratify, their layers no longer mixing as they once did. Warm, oxygen-rich water floats above denser, anoxic depths. In these dark lower layers, life suffocates. Microbial blooms devour what oxygen remains, releasing methane in vast quantities. The sea becomes both cauldron and grave. Volcanic islands rise from the water like glowing wounds, each born from a fissure in the seafloor. They erupt, collapse, and form anew in endless cycles, a process that continues for millions of years. The Earth's surface becomes a shifting mosaic of black stone and steaming water, Some of these islands survive and drift with the continents. Others sink beneath the waves, their basalt skeletons preserved in the ocean crust as silent witnesses to this inferno. From orbit, the planet would look unrecognizable, a sphere wrapped in white clouds, streaked with volcanic red. Lightning arcs through the steam plumes. The oceans, once blue, take on shades of gray and green as ash, and dissolved minerals flood the currents. Every corner of the biosphere feels the weight of this transformation. Yet, even amid this chaos, creation continues. Where lava cools rapidly underwater, strange glass-like structures form. Within them, minerals react with seawater to create chemical gradients, tiny pockets of energy. These are the same kinds of reactions that once gave rise to life billions of years earlier. At hydrothermal vents and volcanic ridges, microbial life clings to the margins of this inferno, feeding on sulfur and iron, finding stability in the heat that should have killed it. Out of destruction, new beginnings flicker. This is the paradox of the Age of Fire. Every act of annihilation sows the seeds of renewal. Fire meets water, and though the encounter is violent, it is also creative. Steam reshapes the air, lava reshapes the land, and together they forge the world anew. What emerges from this crucible will be a planet forever changed, its climate, its oceans, even its chemistry rewritten. The Earth has survived its trial by fire, but the scars of this encounter will endure for eons. The continents may cool, the seas may calm, but beneath it all, the memory of that collision remains, recorded in stone, whispering of a time when the oceans boiled and the sky itself was made of steam. The air once carried the scent of rain and forest. Now, it smells of ash, sulfur, and burning stone. Every breath is heavier than the last. The sky above is no longer blue, no longer even recognizable. What hangs over the planet is a thick chemical fog, an atmosphere remade by fire. The eruptions that once reshaped the continents have turned their fury upward, rewriting the very chemistry of the air. Volcanic gases pour from the fissures of the earth in endless streams. Carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur oxides rise by the billions of tons, mingling with steam and dust. These invisible poisons drift into the upper atmosphere, spreading around the globe. With each eruption, the balance between oxygen and carbon shifts further toward suffocation. The air that once sustained life becomes a slow-moving toxin. Oxygen levels plummet to some of the lowest points in geological history. Animals that once thrived in the open plains now struggle to breathe. Forests, already weakened by drought and heat, begin to die from the inside out. Sulfur oxides mix with the water vapor in the atmosphere, creating sulfuric acid. When it rains, it no longer brings renewal, but ruin. Drops of acid fall upon the land, eating away at leaves, dissolving soils, and stripping nutrients from the surface. Rivers run yellow and metallic, their chemistry changed beyond recognition. The oceans, too, begin to transform. As carbon dioxide dissolves into seawater, it creates carbonic acid, lowering the pH and making the seas corrosive to shells, coral, and plankton. The very foundation of the marine food chain dissolves molecule by molecule. The world becomes a planetary laboratory gone wrong, its atmosphere thick with volatile compounds, its surface reacting to every breath of wind. Methane, released from decaying organic matter and deep seabed reservoirs, amplifies the chaos. Trapped beneath clouds of dust and sulfur, sunlight struggles to reach the ground. Yet when it does, it heats the air far more than before. Greenhouse gases capture that warmth, wrapping the planet in a fever that cannot break. The result is a toxic paradox, acidic rain and searing heat coexisting in a single, unrelenting cycle. Every living thing on the surface feels the weight of this chemical storm. Plants attempt to adapt, closing their pores to keep from losing water. But in doing so, They take in less carbon dioxide, slowing photosynthesis to a crawl. The cycle of oxygen production falters. Animals flee to higher ground or burrow beneath the surface, searching for air untouched by the haze. But even underground, the poison seeps in. Entire ecosystems vanish without sound, erased not by fire or flood, but by air itself. Yet even as the biosphere teeters on collapse, the planet is not dying, it is transforming. The oceans absorb the gases, their chemistry evolving into something new. The crust thickens under layers of volcanic rock, sealing away the ancient atmosphere beneath it. Slowly, painfully, Earth begins to adjust. The excess carbon and sulfur will one day settle into stone, the atmosphere will thin, and the skies will clear. But that recovery lies far in the future. For now, the world stands on the brink of suffocation. It is a planet breathing poison, wrapped in its own exhaust, testing the limits of life's endurance. What survives this age will emerge changed forever, tougher, smaller, and wiser to the fragility of air itself. The Earth is learning to breathe again, but the lesson comes at the cost of nearly everything that lived beneath its burning sky. The world has changed again. The fire has quieted, but its breath still lingers in the air. The gases unleashed from the planet's veins now wrap Earth in an invisible blanket. Heat that once escaped into space can no longer leave. The planet begins to sweat beneath its own sky. Slowly, relentlessly, the temperature rises. 40 degrees Celsius becomes common even in the temperate zones. In the equatorial regions, the air itself seems to shimmer with exhaustion. Polar ice, fragile and small in this ancient age, vanishes completely. Where there were once gleaming caps of white, there is now open water, dark and heat-absorbing. Oceans expand, creeping inland, swallowing coastlines, turning low plains into shallow seas. Rainforests march north and south, claiming the deserts that once defied them. The Earth transforms into a single, continuous greenhouse, humid, lush, and shimmering with heat. The air is heavy with water vapor, the most potent greenhouse gas of all. Clouds tower higher than they ever have before, vast and slow, their undersides lit gold by the thick atmosphere. Rain falls in endless cycles, evaporating, condensing, and falling again. Lakes swell, rivers overflow, and the world becomes a mosaic of wetlands and steaming jungles. The great deserts of Pangaea are gone, buried beneath forests that hum with life. Ferns, conifers, and cycads stretch toward the hazy sun, their leaves glistening with moisture. But this warmth comes with a cost. Beneath the surface, the oceans simmer with change. As temperatures climb, oxygen dissolves less easily in water. Marine life that survived the acidification of the previous age now faces suffocation. The deep seas grow stagnant and anoxic once again. The same warmth that feeds the jungles above strangles the oceans below. On land, evolution begins to respond to this feverish new world. Reptiles, once small and struggling, thrive in the heat. Their cold-blooded bodies are perfectly suited to this greenhouse Earth. They grow larger, faster, more diverse. These are the ancestors of creatures that will soon dominate the planet, the archosaurs, the first great rulers of the Mesozoic world. Life, adapting as it always does, begins to paint this furnace in motion once more. From orbit, the Earth glows faintly, wrapped in a pale orange haze. The contrast between sea and sky is blurred. There are no frozen poles to define the seasons, no sharp boundaries between climates. The planet is unified under a single breath of humidity and warmth, a world without winter. This is the greenhouse Earth, a planet in balance only because it is drowning in its own warmth. The air is thick, the seas are restless, and life teeters between abundance and collapse. Yet, even in this fevered state, beauty persists. The jungles of Pangaea stretch farther than the eye can see, alive with the promise of what is to come. From the ashes of destruction, the world has become a cradle again, a vast, breathing greenhouse where evolution will soon write its next chapter in fire, scale, and survival. The fires have burned down to embers, and from the charred skin of the planet, life begins its slow return. The silence that once gripped the earth starts to fade, replaced by faint sounds, the soft rustle of new leaves, the ripple of water carving its way through fresh volcanic stone, the whisper of wind against unfamiliar forests. Out of heat and ruin, a second beginning takes shape. The world, scarred but fertile, is ready to breathe again. This is the age of rebirth. The air is still heavy with carbon, the ground still radiates warmth, and the oceans shimmer with strange colors. But the conditions that once destroyed life now nurture it. Minerals leached from cooling basalt enrich the soil. The rain, once acidic, now carries the nutrients that spark regrowth. From the shallows of steaming lakes to the banks of rivers born from melted rock, the first green returns mosses, ferns, and hardy plants that thrive in the warmth. They are the pioneers, the vanguard of renewal, spreading across continents that only recently stopped burning. Animals follow soon after. The few survivors of the great dying tiny reptiles, burrowing amphibians, and insect lineages that clung to existence in isolated refuges begin to adapt to this new, hotter world. Reptiles, whose scaly skin protects them from dehydration, flourish under the unrelenting sun. Amphibians retreat to the wetter environments that dot the new landscape, evolving into smaller, tougher forms. Insects, those eternal engineers of survival, return in swarms. The air buzzes once more, filled with the hum of dragonflies, beetles, and the first primitive pollinators. The forests that rise from volcanic ash are different from those that came before. Conifers, ginkgos, and seed ferns dominate, their roots weaving through basaltic soil still warm from below. These forests stretch across what was once desert, forming green corridors that connect continents. The planet, once barren and black, becomes alive with color again. Greens, golds, and browns, painted over the scars of fire. Evolution moves with astonishing speed. The new world rewards experimentation. Where chaos once ruled, opportunity now thrives. Reptiles diversify into new forms, some take to the water, others to the trees, and a few grow large and predatory, filling the empty niches left by extinction. The stage is being set for something extraordinary. Life, once fragile and clinging to the edges of survival, begins to build again with confidence. The climate, though harsh, stabilizes just enough to allow ecosystems to flourish. The greenhouse atmosphere traps warmth and moisture, creating vast tropical belts that stretch across the continents. Rain falls more predictably. Rivers deepen. The planet, though still fevered, finds a rhythm again. Each generation of life builds upon the ruins of the last, shaping a biosphere richer and more resilient than before. From the molten ashes of extinction, Earth has found renewal. The air hums with energy, the seas teem with new life, and the continents pulse with evolution's quiet determination. This rebirth is not gentle, it is driven by survival, forged by fire, and tempered by time. What rises from this era will not just endure, but will dominate. The first whispers of the Mesozoic world are beginning to echo through the forests. The age of fire has given way to an age of life, and the seeds of the age of dinosaurs are already stirring beneath the relentless sun. For the first time in tens of millions of years, the earth exhales. The skies, once the color of rust and smoke, begin to clear. The great plumes of fire that once painted the horizon have quieted, and the ground, scarred by rivers of molten rock, finally cools beneath the sun. The planet enters a rare moment of stillness, a pause between epochs of flame. The air grows cleaner, the oceans settle, and the rhythm of life returns in slow, deliberate waves. Forests begin to reclaim the land. Where once there was only black basalt stretching endlessly across the continents, Now the first shoots of green take hold. Ferns rise through cracks in the cooled lava. Mosses spread across the stone, and young trees push their roots deep into the mineral-rich earth. The ash and magma that once buried everything have become the foundation of rebirth. Volcanic soils, dense with nutrients, breathe life back into the landscape. Forest canopies spread wider with every passing century, their shade cooling the land and stabilizing the fragile climate. Rivers, born from glacial melt and ceaseless rainfall, carve their way through the hardened basalt plains. Over thousands of years, they dig channels deep into the black rock, revealing layer upon layer of the Earth's fiery history. Waterfalls thunder over ancient cliffs of lava, and lakes gather in the scars left by old eruptions. The sound of rushing water replaces the roar of fire. Slowly, the planet begins to remember peace. In this lull between flames, ecosystems take shape again. Insects return first, filling the air with motion. Their hum carries across the forests like a soft hymn of recovery. Amphibians creep along riverbanks, basking in the humid air. Reptiles, now more diverse and adaptive than ever, flourish in the warmth of this greenhouse earth. They hunt, swim, and climb through the lush new world that has emerged from destruction. Early ancestors of crocodiles and dinosaurs begin to appear, small and unassuming, unaware of the vast legacy that lies ahead of them. The oceans mirror this transformation. Coral reefs begin to reform along the coasts, built by new species evolved from survivors of the Great Extinction. Plankton blooms return to the surface, painting the waters with life and color. The oxygen in the atmosphere rises slowly, allowing creatures to grow larger, stronger, and more complex. The biosphere, once shattered, finds its balance again. But the calm is deceptive. Beneath the continents, the mantle still churns. The same plumes that once tore open the crust have not gone dormant, they are only gathering strength. Deep tremors ripple through the lithosphere, subtle reminders that the Earth's peace is temporary. Every river that cuts through basalt, every forest that takes root, does so upon a foundation of sleeping fire. For millions of years, this fragile stability holds. The world grows green, the air sweetens, and life blossoms once more. It is a period of quiet evolution, a breath between cataclysms, but the Earth never truly rests. Its heart, still molten, beats with the promise of future upheaval. The lull between flames is a gift, a moment of renewal in the endless rhythm of destruction and rebirth. Soon, the fire will return, and with it, the next great transformation of the world. 200 million years ago, the world begins to tremble again. After a brief age of calm, the crust beneath Pangaea stirs with renewed energy. Deep within the mantle, molten rock rises once more, pressing upward, forcing its way through fractures that have slept for millions of years. The supercontinent, which has dominated the planet for over 100 million years, is about to be torn apart. The next chapter in Earth's fiery story begins not with an explosion, but with a slow, unstoppable cracking of the world itself. The first fissures appear along what will one day become the Atlantic Ocean. From the heart of Pangaea, stretching from the lands that will become Brazil and West Africa to the future coasts of North America and Europe, glowing seams of magma split the ground. They extend for thousands of kilometers, bleeding molten basalt into the open air. The eruptions that follow are vast beyond comprehension. This is the birth of the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, one of the largest volcanic events in the planet's history. Lava floods across the land in waves, spilling through jungles, river valleys, and plains that once flourished with life. The air fills again with the familiar scent of sulfur and the roar of 1,000 volcanoes. Each eruption releases more carbon dioxide, methane, and ash, building a greenhouse veil that wraps the world in heat. The skies glow orange for centuries, then darken with ash as the Earth exhales its molten heart. Entire ecosystems vanish once more, smothered under layers of fire. The planet that once felt unified now begins to fracture. As the mantle forces push upward, the supercontinent begins to split apart, its once solid crust stretched thin. Massive rift valleys open across what will one day become the Atlantic Basin. Each one floods with lava, forming new crust where once there was none. The very ocean floor is being born in real time, forged in heat and pressure. This is not a single eruption, it is an era of fire lasting millions of years. The scale is unimaginable. Across Pangaea, basaltic floods cover an area greater than all of modern Europe. From the coast of what will become Morocco to the shores of New Jersey, molten rivers flow, solidifying into plateaus of black stone. When the fires cool, they leave behind thick layers of basalt stacked in steps, a geological testament to the power of the Earth's internal engine. The continents, once bound together, begin their slow drift apart, carried by the very forces that tore them open. As the fissures widen and fill with lava, the first outlines of the Atlantic Ocean take shape. What was once a rift, filled with magma, will become a sea, and later an ocean that will define the modern world. The planet is reshaping itself again, creating new coastlines, climates, and futures. The Atlantic is born not from water, but from fire. The continents drift slowly, carrying with them the memory of their shared origin. And though the eruptions fade, their legacy remains written in the stones beneath our feet, a reminder that every ocean, every mountain, every boundary we know was first carved by the restless heart of the Earth. The Atlantic's awakening marks not the end of destruction, but the beginning of the next age of life, carried on the waves of a world reborn. From the ashes of fire and extinction, something new begins to stir. The world that once belonged to ancient reptiles and amphibians has been reshaped by chaos, its surface rewritten by lava, its skies thick with the residue of past eruptions. Yet in this world of ruin and warmth, opportunity begins to bloom. The age of dinosaurs is dawning, and with it, the greatest reign of life the planet has ever known. The fires of the central Atlantic eruptions have done their work. The old lineages, those that had ruled since before the Great Dying, are gone or broken. Entire families of reptiles, once masters of swamp and forest, have vanished into the fossil record. The ecosystem has been wiped clean, its balance reset. But in the language of evolution, destruction is not an ending, it is invitation. Every extinction opens space for something new to rise, and in the wake of lava and smoke, life seizes its chance. Across the newly formed continents, the survivors begin to adapt. The world is hot, humid, and fertile, covered in forests of towering conifers and thick ferns. Rivers wind through plains of black basalt, carving paths between young mountain ridges. The atmosphere, rich in carbon dioxide, feeds the green abundance. And in this lush heat, the first true dinosaurs step into dominance. They are not yet the giants of legend, but small, agile creatures, fast-moving hunters, with long tails for balance and sharp eyes that pierce the haze. Their bones are light, their lungs efficient, their hearts powerful. Evolution has crafted them for endurance, for motion, for the new world that never stops changing. They thrive where others falter, their bodies built for the furnace that the Earth has become. Slowly, they spread. Across the plains of what will become North America, through the jungles of Africa and South America, into the valleys of Asia and the highlands of Europe, dinosaurs begin to diversify. Some grow larger, their limbs thick and strong, built for crushing vegetation and defending against predators. Others become hunters, sleek and intelligent, masters of pursuit. The planet fills once again with movement, color, and sound. From above, Earth is transformed. The continents, drifting apart, are green again. Volcanoes still glow along the horizon, but the forests have returned. Great rivers twist through basins filled with life. The air hums with the buzz of insects, the cries of primitive birds, and the deep, resonant calls of reptiles that will one day rule for more than 160 million years. The pattern is as old as time: fire, destruction, rebirth. The same forces that burned the world now sustain it. The carbon, once released in chaos, fuels the forests that feed the herbivores. The heat that nearly ended life becomes the energy that drives evolution forward. The earth, scarred and wounded, has learned again to create through loss. The age of dinosaurs does not begin with thunder or catastrophe, it begins quietly, with adaptation. The creatures that rise here will not just survive the fire, they will embody it. Their bones will carry the memory of the planet's fever, their eyes the reflection of its molten heart. For more than 100 million years, they will walk in the shadow of that fire, turning destruction into empire. The world is alive again, and its new rulers have taken their first breath beneath a sky still warm from the age that forged them. When the firestorms faded and the continents cooled, the world entered a new phase of beauty, one born from ruin. The black basalt that once flowed endlessly across the land, now stretched for thousands of kilometers, hardened into rippling plains of stone. What had been rivers of fire became vast, frozen seas of rock. The air still carried the faint scent of sulfur and rain. But above this desolation, life began its slow return. The earth, though scarred, was alive again. These were the basalt worlds, a landscape shaped by fire and cooled by time. Across what would one day be Africa, South America, and North America, the planet's surface gleamed in dark tones. Lava turned to stone, smoothed by wind and rain. Deep cracks split the crust where molten rivers once surged. Over millions of years, water began to collect in these fractures, creating lakes, streams, and rivers that cut through the hardened flows. The first signs of green appeared in the black wilderness, tiny ferns clinging to cracks where moisture gathered, roots gripping stone that had once glowed like the sun. Soon, the world was transformed again. Where lava had cooled, soil began to form. Volcanic ash, rich in minerals, provided a perfect foundation for life. Primitive plants, ferns, cycads, and conifers spread across the basalt plains, turning fields of obsidian gray into jungles of emerald. The forests that rose here were unlike any that came before. They grew from fire itself, their roots feeding on minerals once trapped in molten rock. Life had learned a new lesson: how to grow on the bones of catastrophe. These forests spread like rivers of green, flowing across continents divided by time and heat. The basalt plateaus, once barren, became corridors of life. Towering cycads with feathery crowns reached toward a hazy sky. Conifers with resin-rich bark stood sentinel over the new ecosystems. Between their trunks, early reptiles prowled, insects hummed, and the air shimmered with humidity. The earth was once again fertile, its new ecosystems thriving on the residue of its own destruction. The rivers that carved through the basalt carried more than water, they carried memory. Every raindrop that fell on these fields of rock eroded them, grinding stone into dust that enriched the soil downstream. Floodplains bloomed with vegetation, and over generations, the green tide crept further across the land. Life followed the paths of these rivers like pilgrims, repopulating the continents in a slow, deliberate wave. But beneath the beauty, the world was still restless. Deep within the crust, the mantle continued to pulse, its heat slowly pressing upward. The basalt landscapes, though peaceful now, were reminders that the earth's calm was temporary. The same fires that had forged this new paradise still burned beneath the surface, waiting. From a distance, the planet must have looked radiant, a sphere streaked with black and green, where forests met volcanic plains, and rivers glittered in the sunlight. It was a world reborn from fire, a living monument to endurance. Every plant, every creature that walked across the basalt remembered what came before. The earth had learned once again that creation is inseparable from destruction. On these lava highways and in these basalt forests, life wrote its next chapter, one of persistence, adaptation, and quiet defiance against the memory of flame. In the aftermath of the lava's fury, when the molten rivers slowed and hardened into vast fields of black stone, the earth still pulsed with energy. The air above these basalt plains shimmered with heat, thick with dust, ash, and vapor rising from the cooling rock. It was here, in the space between fire and sky, that the planet found another form of expression: storms, born not from oceans or seasons, but from the raw breath of creation itself. The heat rising from the fresh lava fields met the cooler air above, creating massive convection currents that spiraled upward into the atmosphere. Moisture from distant seas and evaporating lakes was drawn into the rising columns, condensing into towering clouds that stretched miles high. These were not ordinary storms. They were colossal, electric, and alive. Each cloud churned with energy, dark at its core and glowing at its edges with the faint reflection of the still cooling earth below. Within these storm systems, the ash carried upward by the heat created perfect conditions for chaos. Tiny particles rubbed together as they collided, separating positive and negative charges. The sky filled with friction, invisible yet immense, until the balance could no longer hold. The result was instantaneous. Lightning tore through the clouds, splitting the darkness with blinding light. Bolts of static fire rained across the horizon, illuminating the land in bursts of white and blue. For brief moments, night turned to day as electricity laced through the ash. Each strike released an energy older than the continents themselves. Lightning struck the basalt fields with crackling fury, sometimes vaporizing the surface, sometimes igniting the gases that still seeped from the ground. The air sizzled, the sky roared, and the world glowed from within. The storms lasted for days, sometimes weeks, fueled by the endless heat below. From a distance, the planet must have looked like a glowing ember, wrapped in clouds, each lightning strike a pulse of its restless heart. But amid this violence, there was a strange beauty. These storms were cleansing the air, washing ash back to the surface, and carrying vital minerals across the land. The lightning, powerful enough to split atoms, triggered chemical reactions in the atmosphere, forming compounds that would nourish the soil. Even as destruction danced across the sky, creation was quietly taking shape beneath it. In the silence after each storm, the world was transformed again. The air was clearer, the ground rich with new elements forged in heat and light. Seeds carried by the wind found purchase in the cracks between rocks. Mosses spread. Life crept back into the very places that had been struck most fiercely. This was lightning's legacy. It was not just a spectacle of power but a reminder of balance, how the same forces that tear the world apart can also prepare it for renewal. Every flash of electricity, every rumble of thunder, marked another heartbeat in the planet's recovery. The age of fire had not truly ended. It had simply changed form. Now, the flames danced in the sky instead of the ground, carried by clouds instead of magma. The world was still young, still unstable, but it was alive, and through lightning, ash, and rain, it continued to remember the power that had shaped it, and the light that would guide all life to come. 66 million years ago, the Earth trembles once more. After tens of millions of years of relative calm, the planet's interior begins to stir with renewed ferocity. Deep beneath the Indian subcontinent, the mantle wakes. Pressure builds in silence. Magma surges upward through fissures in the crust, and the first great fountains of lava burst into the sky. The Earth has begun its final symphony of fire, the Deccan Inferno. At this time, India is not yet where we know it today. It is an island continent, drifting rapidly northward, across the Tethys Ocean, moving at nearly 20 centimeters a year, faster than any continent before or since. Beneath it lies a rising plume of molten rock, a column of superheated material stretching from the core mantle boundary to the base of the crust. When these two forces meet India's speed and the mantle's heat, the result is catastrophic. The crust ruptures across an area larger than all of Western Europe. From these wounds, lava pours forth in unbroken waves, covering the land in molten rock. It does not erupt from a single volcano, but from thousands of fissures stretching across the Indian landscape. Rivers of basalt flow for hundreds of kilometers, filling valleys, drowning forests, and burying everything in their path beneath layers of fire. Some eruptions last for weeks, others for centuries. Together, they will continue for more than 1,000,000 years. The Deccan Traps become one of the largest volcanic provinces in the planet's history. Layer upon layer of basalt builds up, reaching more than 2 kilometers thick in some regions. Each flow cools and hardens before being buried by the next, forming a staircase of stone that still defines the landscape of Western India today. But what is seen in the rocks is only a shadow of the scale of destruction. The true transformation unfolds in the atmosphere above. Every eruption releases colossal volumes of gas, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, methane, and chlorine. The skies fill with sulfuric haze that reflects sunlight, plunging the world into long, volcanic winters. Temperatures drop, photosynthesis falters, and ecosystems strain to survive. When the haze finally settles, the greenhouse gases take over, trapping heat and driving the planet into fever once more. It is a deadly rhythm of cold and heat, starvation and suffocation, repeated over and over for hundreds of thousands of years. The oceans absorb much of this chaos. Acid rain pours from the sky, feeding rivers that carry ash and minerals to the sea. The chemistry of the oceans shifts again, and marine life struggles to adapt. Coral reefs die, plankton populations collapse, the balance of carbon and oxygen falters. Across the world, the biosphere begins to unravel. And then, as if in cruel synchrony, the planet endures another catastrophe. While the Deccan eruptions rage on, a massive asteroid strikes what will become the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact, the shock waves, the darkness that follows all unfold within the same geological heartbeat as the inferno in India. The two disasters together mark the end of the dinosaurs' reign and the close of the Mesozoic era. When the fires finally die, the earth is once again silent. The air clears, the lava cools, and the continents settle into the positions we recognize today. The Deccan Traps remain as the enduring monument to this age, a frozen ocean of basalt stretching across the land, a reminder of the time when India burned and the world itself was reborn through fire. The Deccan Inferno was not merely an ending. It was a transition, a final act in the planet's long symphony of destruction and renewal. 66 million years ago, the world was already burning. Across India, the Deccan eruptions had turned the land into an inferno that spanned continents, filling the skies with ash and sulfur, choking the air with heat and poison. Yet as the lava continued to flow, the planet's greatest catastrophe was still on its way. In the far reaches of the solar system, a piece of rock nearly 10 kilometers wide hurtled toward Earth at unimaginable speed. When it arrived, it would strike with the force of 1 billion nuclear bombs. The age of fire was about to meet its final flame. The asteroid entered the atmosphere above what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. For a moment, it blazed brighter than the sun. Then, it struck. In an instant, the crust shattered. The ground heaved and liquefied. The air itself caught fire. A shock wave raced across the planet faster than sound, flattening forests and mountains. A column of molten rock, ash, and vapor erupted skyward, punching through the atmosphere and reaching the edge of space. Where it landed, the crater stretched more than 150 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep, a wound in the earth that would never truly heal. The impact unleashed chaos on every scale. Earthquakes rippled through the continents, tsunamis hundreds of meters high swept across the seas, and molten rock rained down from the heavens. The skies turned red, then black. Within hours, wildfires ignited across the globe. Trees, grasslands, and entire forests burst into flame as embers fell like rain. The same carbon that had fed life for millions of years now burned in a single planetary blaze. For days, the world glowed with the light of burning continents. Then came the darkness. Ash and soot from the fires and impact debris filled the atmosphere, blocking out sunlight completely. Photosynthesis stopped, temperatures plummeted, the seas cooled, and the air grew still and cold. The Earth entered what scientists call an impact winter, a global night that lasted for months, perhaps years. The dinosaurs, rulers of the Mesozoic world, found themselves in a planet that no longer remembered warmth. Those that survived the fire now faced starvation and frost. Without sunlight, the plants withered. The herbivores fell first, their vast bodies collapsing in empty plains. The predators followed soon after. The thunder of footsteps that had echoed for over 100 million years faded into silence. The age of giants ended, not with a single explosion, but with the long, echoing quiet that followed. In the oceans, the devastation was just as complete. Shock waves disturbed the currents, toxic metals rained from the sky, and acidified waters dissolved shells and reefs. The marine reptiles vanished, and the once vibrant seas turned pale and still. Nearly 3/4 of all life on Earth disappeared. And yet, even amid annihilation, the planet prepared for renewal. The Deccan traps continued to erupt for thousands of years after the impact, releasing heat and carbon dioxide back into the air. Slowly, the climate warmed again. From the ashes of both fire and darkness, small survivors emerged: mammals, birds, and the seeds of new forests. The irony was poetic and cruel. The dinosaurs, born in an age of fire that had forged their world, perished in another. Lava and impact joined forces in a final act of planetary transformation. The sky fell, and the Earth began anew. From the death of the old world, the blueprint for the next age, the age of mammals, of resilience, of us, was written into the dust. The world still breathes fire. Beneath every mountain range, under every ocean, deep below the crust that carries forests and cities, the same ancient heat that once split continents and drowned the Earth in lava continues its eternal rhythm. The age of fire never truly ended, it only sank deeper, biding its time, whispering through cracks and volcanoes, waiting for its next breath. Every volcano that smokes today is a window into the planet's memory. When magma rises through the crust, it carries with it whispers from the mantle, messages written in molten rock. The eruptions we see now, from the glowing slopes of Hawaii to the trembling calderas of Iceland, are but faint echoes of the colossal infernos that once reshaped the continents. Yet each one reminds us that Earth is still alive, still burning from within. Beneath the oceans, the process continues in silence. Along the mid-ocean ridges, those vast scars that circle the globe like seams on a sphere, lava flows in endless slow motion. New crust forms where magma rises from the mantle and hardens in the cold seawater. Every second, a few centimeters of new seafloor is born, spreading outward, pushing continents further apart. The planet is constantly remaking itself. It is a living engine of stone and flame. Even the most tranquil landscapes are built on fire's legacy. The fertile soils that feed our fields and forests were once ash and molten rock. The mountains that cradle glaciers were lifted by heat from below. The islands scattered across the seas, Hawaii, the Galapagos, Iceland, are not accidents of geography, but the children of fire, born from deep mantle plumes that still burn thousands of kilometers beneath our feet. In places like Yellowstone and the East African Rift, the Earth's breath still shakes the ground. Geysers, hot springs, and fumaroles are the surface expressions of an ancient power that never faded. What appears serene on the surface hides a restless heart below. Every tremor, every plume of steam, is part of a cycle that has been ongoing for billions of years. A slow, planetary heartbeat that neither begins nor ends, only transforms. The story of Earth is the story of that fire. It is the force that built the continents, forged the atmosphere, and shaped the evolution of life itself. Without it, there would be no mountains, no oceans, no living world. Fire was the first sculptor, the first painter, the first architect of everything we see. Today, we walk across a crust only a few dozen kilometers thick, suspended above a mantle that never cools. We build our cities on sleeping volcanoes. We swim above ridges of new stone forming beneath the sea. And we marvel at the landscapes carved by ancient eruptions. Yet few realize that every grain of sand, every pebble, every mountain ridge is part of that same unbroken cycle of heat and renewal. The fire never ends. It cannot. It is the pulse of the planet, the core of its identity. The continents still drift, the oceans still open, and the sky still carries traces of sulfur from eruptions that began before humanity ever existed. Long after we are gone, the Earth will continue to exhale its heat into the cold of space, glowing faintly with the same inner light that has burned since the beginning. The story of fire is not past, it is the present, and it will be the future, for as long as the Earth remembers how to breathe. Across the planet, there are places where the past still breathes, silent landscapes carved from fire, where stone remembers the days when the Earth itself was liquid. These are the fossil flames, the geological relics of a time when continents glowed red and oceans boiled under a shroud of ash. The inferno has long faded, but its memory is etched into every basalt cliff, every column of black stone, every hardened ripple of lava that still bears the fingerprints of a molten world. In Iceland, you can stand at the edge of a sea cliff and see it clearly. Layers of dark rock stack one atop another, like pages in an ancient book. Each layer tells the story of a separate eruption, a pulse of fire that once poured from the heart of the planet and spread outward in waves. When the lava cooled, it cracked into perfect hexagonal columns, geometric patterns formed by physics and patience. These are columnar joints, nature's architecture of fire, frozen in place. They rise like cathedrals built not by hands but by heat, silent monuments to the planet's inner power. Far from Iceland, along the coasts of India, the Deccan Traps still sprawl across the landscape like an ocean turned to stone. Their vast, stair-stepped plateaus, carved by time and weather, stretch for hundreds of kilometers, remnants of one of the largest volcanic events in history. Each ridge, each cliff, is a scar left by the million-year eruptions that reshaped the biosphere and marked the end of the dinosaurs' reign. When sunlight touches their dark surfaces, the rock seems to breathe with colored deep gray, bronze, and crimson tones that hint at the fire still locked within. In Hawaii and the mid-ocean ridges of the Pacific, the Earth continues to produce smaller echoes of that ancient age. Here, beneath the waves, new basalt is born every day. When molten lava meets the ocean, it forms pillow lava's smooth, rounded structures that look like bubbles, frozen mid-burst. These shapes tell the story of water meeting fire, a dialogue that has lasted for billions of years. Each pillow is a fossilized moment, a record of the instant when the sea claimed the flame and turned chaos into form. In the American West, the Columbia River basalts stretch across vast plains, sculpted by wind and time. Towering cliffs reveal the same layered patterns seen in Iceland, but on a scale so massive it defies imagination. What once flowed like rivers of fire now stands silent and cold, the bones of ancient eruptions exposed to the sun. The land itself has become a museum of the Earth's earliest violence. All around the world, these remnants form a network of memory, a planetary archive of the deep past. To walk among them is to walk across time, to feel the pulse of the mantle beneath your feet. Though the lava has long cooled, the energy that created it still stirs within the planet's heart. The basalt cliffs, the columnar joints, and the pillow lavas are not dead. They are the Earth's preserved heartbeat, frozen mid-pulse. These fossil flames remind us that the ground beneath us was once alive with fire. They whisper of an age when continents were seas of magma, when the planet remade itself again and again. The landscapes we see today, mountains, valleys, and coasts, are built upon those moments of fury. In every rock, there is a trace of the fire that shaped it. The Earth carries its memories not in words, but in stone. And through these ancient remnants, it still tells the story of its burning youth, the time when the world itself was flame. The story of fire has never truly ended. It only changed hands. The same elements that once poured from the Earth's mantle, transforming the world through heat and chaos, now emerge from our own machines and cities. The fires that once burned across continents now burn in furnaces, engines, and power plants. The smoke no longer rises from fissures in the crust, but from the chimneys of civilization. And just as before, the air is changing. The sky, once dimmed by volcanic haze, is again thickening with carbon. History is repeating itself, not with lava this time, but with us. Every breath of our modern world is powered by ancient fire. The coal we burn, the oil we refine, the gas we ignite. They are all the remnants of life that once flourished after the great extinctions of the past. They were born in the aftermath of the same infernos that reshaped the Earth, buried deep beneath the crust, waiting for eons. Now, we dig them up and set them alight, releasing their stored energy, their stored carbon, their stored heat. In doing so, we have become the next eruption. The atmosphere, once shaped by volcanoes, is once again filling with the same gases: carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur, water vapor. The cycle has come full circle. The evidence is written everywhere. Temperatures are rising, glaciers are retreating, and oceans are swelling. The same forces that turned the planet into a greenhouse during the ages of fire are stirring once more. Only this time, their source is human. We have inherited the power to alter the planet's chemistry, to tip the balance of air and sea. The mantle once drove this transformation through pressure and molten rock. Now it happens through policy, economy, and desire. We are, in every sense, the new volcanoes. The lessons of the inferno are not distant history. The geological record tells us what happens when carbon floods the atmosphere and when heat climbs beyond nature's tolerance. It tells us that ecosystems collapse not gradually, but suddenly, like cliffs giving way to the sea. It tells us that when the balance of the atmosphere breaks, recovery takes millions of years. We may not live long enough to see the end of this cycle, but we can see its beginning all around us: the warming seas, the stronger storms, the fires that consume our forests and skies. And yet, within this sobering mirror of the past lies a choice. The Earth has always survived its own fury, but the cost has been extinction and transformation. Life endures, but never unchanged. Unlike the volcanoes of the past, we have something new: awareness. We can see the pattern. We can measure the gases. We can predict the storm before it breaks. The same knowledge that reveals the scars of ancient fire can guide us away from repeating them. When we look at the basalt cliffs, the fossilized flows, the remnants of lava turned to stone, we are looking at warnings written by the planet itself. They tell us what happens when fire runs unchecked, when carbon overpowers the sky, when heat becomes the author of history. The Earth does not punish, it reacts. The same laws that governed the inferno still govern now. We stand at the edge of another transformation, holding the same spark that once belonged only to the mantle. The question is not whether the Earth can survive, she always does, but whether we can survive the world we are creating. The lesson of the Inferno is simple. Fire can create, and fire can destroy. The choice between them, for the first time, belongs to us. The world is quiet now. The storms have faded, the fires have cooled, and the scars of molten stone have turned to mountains and valleys. The camera glides low across fields of black basalt, over obsidian plains that shimmer faintly in the light of a fading sun. The Earth, once a furnace of chaos and creation, rests beneath its thin crust, still breathing, still alive, still waiting. What began in fire has ended in stillness. But this silence is not the sound of peace, it is the sound of something sleeping. Every rock beneath our feet is a memory. Each ridge, cliff, and canyon holds within it the record of the world's heartbeat, measured not in years, but in pulses of molten time. Basalt flows, once glowing rivers of magma, are now the foundations of continents. Obsidian, born from violent eruptions, lies glassy and cold, reflecting the sky like a mirror to the past. The landscapes that surround us are fossils of flame, proof that the Earth is not a finished work but a story still unfolding beneath its surface. As the camera drifts across these ancient fields, we begin to sense the scale of time. Millions of years pass like breaths. Continents drift, mountains rise and crumble, and forests bloom and vanish. Above all of it, the planet's heart continues to beat slowly beneath the crust, its molten core churning like a sleeping giant beneath blankets of stone. For now, the surface is calm, but deep below, the mantle still moves in silence. Columns of heat twist and curl in the darkness, slowly reshaping the world from within. Volcanoes, mid-ocean ridges, and deep rifts are the faint whispers of that energy. The fire never truly died, it only withdrew, folding itself into the core, patient as time itself. Every plume of smoke that rises from a crater, every tremor beneath the sea, every pulse of heat from a geyser is a reminder that the Earth still breathes. Its lungs are stone. Its heartbeat is molten. Its silence is temporary. If we could listen closely enough, we might hear it, the slow rhythm of magma moving miles beneath our feet. It is the same rhythm that built the continents, the same rhythm that tore them apart, the same rhythm that once turned the sky red with fire. The Earth has not forgotten how to burn. It merely dreams. The obsidian plains stretch endlessly into the horizon, their surfaces fractured like glass, glowing faintly under the weight of starlight. In the cracks, tiny green shoots emerge life, reclaiming what fire once took. It is the eternal cycle, repeated since the beginning. Destruction, silence, renewal. The Earth rests only to begin again. The camera pulls back now, rising higher until the curve of the planet fills the frame. From orbit, the scars of the ancient infernos fade into beauty, the blues of oceans, the greens of forests, the whites of clouds drifting gently across a calm world. Yet beneath that calm exterior lies a heart that never stops burning. The final words are almost a whisper. The fire never left. It only sleeps, waiting for the next breath of the planet. And someday, when the cycle begins anew, the world will awaken once more. Not in darkness, but in flame. For the story of Earth has always been written in fire, and the fire has never forgotten its place.